Will the Committee on Public Infrastructure and Technology please come to order? Committee Vice Chair Say and Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. Thank you, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, for fulfilling quorum today. Councilmember Toba and Councilmember Wire are excused from today's meetings. And there's no one participating remotely. Pursuant to Section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statute, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways, remotely and in person in the council chamber. Remote and in-person oral testimony will be allowed when the agenda item is taken up. Before testifying, each person shall state their name. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen, activate your audio feed when prompted. I will then give persons who have not registered an opportunity to offer testimony. Please utilize the raise hand feature in Zoom to be called on. For those joining us by telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Some friendly reminders and tips: video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are also watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your television at the time that you are called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. Once all remote testifiers have testified, I will proceed to in-person testimony in the council chamber. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at remote meetings to be conducted by roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. There's no one participating remotely. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. Okay, members, let's go to agenda item number 1 for action, Bill 62, updating the fire code of the City and County of Honolulu. And the status of this was introduced actually last year, and we had first reading, but we held off to this year because we were working on a few things and also wanted to introduce some of our fire legislation all together. So let us start off with administration. I do believe that we had the Battalion Chief Pao Ching Huang from Honolulu Fire Department here. If you could go ahead and turn on the microphone, introduce yourself, and then address the committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair Tupola, Vice Chair Say, and committee members. I'm Battalion Chief Pao Chi Huang with the Honolulu Fire Department. The department appreciates the work the committee has done to advocate for the use of automatic fire sprinklers. However, the Honolulu Fire Department is in opposition of Bill 62. Our department's mission is to protect life and property, and we have identified 288 high-rise buildings in Honolulu that are not protected by automatic fire sprinklers and have not received an acceptable score in the building fire and life safety evaluations. We believe that pushing the timeline for compliance back will not address the safety concerns of these high-rise buildings. The Honolulu Fire Department has always and will continue to look for ways to make our community safer, and one way is to advocate for automatic fire sprinkler systems in the high rises of our community. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to kind of put the bill together for you because you weren't here when I worked on this last year, but we worked extensively, not only with HFD, but also with all the building owners. I held a town hall with every single high-rise association. We made actually a long Excel sheet of every single one. We are working on 2 other pieces of legislation that we think will financially benefit the condo associations. One of them is going to be, it's not introduced today, but one of them is going to allow them to possibly have a tax credit for retrofit instead of just for sprinklers. And the second one is actually going to allow the association to apply for it as opposed to only individuals, since the upgrade of the infrastructure is typically done by the association and not by individual owners. And thirdly, we discussed allowing for the owner and not just the tenant to be involved in that. So this whole conversation, I can give you the PowerPoint of what we did with them, existed last year. And let me just walk through, and for the committee members, let me walk through what we're doing here. So on here, it said that the LSC was supposed to be done in 2018, which is long gone. And so now the date is 2038. there is the majority of people who have completed the LSE, which is a life safety evaluation. We wrote in here anew on page 3, this is something new that we thought would help to kind of make sure that people hit the 2038. So I didn't just push back the date. I put down that they would have to meet with all the people in the building by 2030 to determine what path they were going to take forward. They could either do the sprinkler, figure out the financing, tell the condo association owners that they're going to have to pay for it, or 2, they could decide if they're qualified to do a retrofit. It was one of the things that a lot of the building owners had told me is that they hadn't even communicated with each of the owners on how financially burdensome this was. And so I put in here that no later than 2030, if the date's 2038, that they would have to convene, which many of them have already. In fact, after we had that town hall, one building actually started their loan with Bank of Hawaii. I know because they met with, First Hawaiian Bank, because they met with me afterwards and said because of the town hall, they decided to implement the sprinklers. And if you go to page 4, it says here that the LSE and the timelines to obtain all of the building owners' intent has to be filed no later than May 30th with HFD. So if you go to the middle of page 4, I wrote a financial and design plan for high-rise residential buildings that opt to install automatic fire sprinklers has to be filed with AHJ for approval no later than May 3rd, 2030. So that means that they're going to be doing it way before 2038. What we wanted to do was make sure that they're implementing plans, because if people keep waiting, it's just going to cost us more and more money. And we were very clear with them that if they start implementing plans, that possibly and likely their insurance rates would be improved as well, because they're battling insurance rates that are skyrocketing that they are paying for. And I'm saying that because even in my community, once we did a hazard assessment, all of our insurance rates went down because it became more safe. And that's why some of the buildings are actually willing to do it even faster now, because I'm going to start modifying all of the credits so that they can get credits. Also, one of the things that we just discussed at the council was having what is the loan thing called that Matt had?
CPACE.
What is it? CPACE. Yes. We talked about allowing for the CPACE to help provide the loan for the sprinkler system, which we previously didn't have CPACE. So I just want to throw it out there that I worked on like tons of financial things so that nobody would have any excuses. I put a mid-range mark, so not just move to 2038, but by 2030 that everyone would have to have all their plans done, which if you have your plan done, more likely than not, you're already going out to see if you can get a loan for it, right? If you can apply for all of that. So that's the breadth of the whole entire reason why this looks the way it is. Okay, council members, any questions for HFD? Go ahead, Council Member Dos Santos Tam.
Thank you. Could you remind me, what is the penalty if a building does not comply with either the LSE or doing all of the steps thereafter by
Nothing.
2030, 2038?
Nothing. Yeah. So I think for me, when I had the town hall, it was more of me, of course, encouraging them for the safety of their building, but actually each of the buildings went through with me what kind of quotes they were getting. They were also going through with me that they didn't know that there's a Board of Water Supply discount for the hookup if they do it. All of them didn't really know about the RPT, so I think walking them through all of the financial steps helped them to kind of make a better decision that they needed to move forward with it. But there were a handful of buildings that qualified for retrofit, meaning that they didn't have to sprinkler. They had to like enclose some of the empty spaces in their walls, and some of that's going to cost them money, but not nearly as much money as a sprinkler would cost them. So they decided to actually pursue the retrofit so that they could qualify and have a high enough LSE score. So it was a really productive meeting, and we're going to have another one prior to me introducing the next 3 ones to make sure everyone knows what financial credits they can use to apply for loans. Council members, say any questions? Okay, let's go to testimony. Clerks, are there any registered online testifiers?
Chair, we have Angela Young.
Okay, Angela Melody Young, please proceed.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES. So I am going to be in strong support of the fire legislation. So although that was like a lot of information, I think as an advocacy and research grassroots movement, I like to refer to a data point from Senate Bill 855, which was enacted as Act 199 from 2023 from Fukuoka Roads, Chang, and Moriwaki. So the measure does not provide historical evidence of the accounts which have led to the proposal of the measure. And I think I'm speculating, but I think it was in response to the Kapahulu building in 2017, which was on fire in Moiliili, which was not equipped with a sprinkler system. People died in the fire. So the legislature then put it into law for fire safety reasons for condo associations to legislatively outline how to study the finances to prepare within the condo associations a budget plan for fire
Thank you so
equipment.
much, Angela. Please wrap up. Thank you.
So I think it should start with a discussion with the stakeholders.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you for your time.
yeah.
Clerks, do we have any non-registered testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Do we have any in-person registered testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Do we have any in-person non-registered testifiers that would like to come up to the mic right now, run up and say something? Nope? Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to close testimony at this time. So committee members, it is my recommendation that we pass this out. As I stated, there's just so many things that people were unaware of, and I'm going to continue to make them aware of since we have a nice database going. There is still, for those listening, still a $2,000 tax credit for every single unit. If you want to apply for it, we still have about $149,000 in the city set aside for this. We're going to see if this money can also be used, possibly for retrofits, not just for sprinklers. And of course, we would love to see it be used by the entire association, if that's a possibility, since the association will be paying for the upgrade. Thank you to those 9 who submitted testimony in support. Council members, are there any objections? Any reservations? Okay, Bill 62 is passed out. The chair recommends that Bill 62 be reported out for second reading and scheduled for a public hearing. So ordered. Okay, let's go to agenda item number 2, urging the Leeward Coast neighborhood communities to participate in the National Fire Protections Association Firewise USA program to help the neighborhoods achieve Firewise USA recognition. With us, we have Battalion Chief Pao Chi Huang from Honolulu Fire Department.
Good afternoon again, Committee Chair Tupola, Vice Chair Say, and the committee members. Again, I'm Pao Chi Huang with the Honolulu Fire Department. The Honolulu Fire Department is in support of this resolution 24-247. Our department's mission is to protect the safety and the people of Honolulu through prevention and preparedness. The Firewise program does align with our mission when it comes to wildland fires. Firewise helps educate and organize communities to take actions to mitigate wildfire hazards. The Honolulu Fire Department will support this resolution and will assist these Firewise communities the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Battalion Chief. Council members, any questions for Chief? Okay, let's go to registered testimony. Clerks, are there any registered or non-registered online testifiers?
Chair, we have Angela Young.
Angela Melody Young, please proceed. Agenda item number 2.
Yes. Angela Melody Young from CARES and Strong Support. I think legislatively the resolution is good. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your support. Clerks, are there any in-person registered or non-registered testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, council members, we're in discussion. Do we have any discussion points? Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Councilmember DeSantos.
I just wanted to thank you for introducing this. I think it's a really good idea, and I wish my communities would participate in this as well. I had no idea such a thing exists. But, you know, we have concerns about Punch Bowl. I mean, everyone looks at how brown Punch Bowl is sometimes, and there's neighbors who are concerned there. So I'm certainly interested.
Thank you. HWMO is based off the Big Island. You'd be shocked to know we only have one on Oahu, one officially Firewise community, and it's on the east side. But the PSPS, which is the Public Safety Power Shutoff with HECO, all of the areas of high concern are on the west side. So I feel like we should all be doing this for our own safety, but it could be in any community. I'm doing one for my association where I live. We just did the hazard assessment. So I feel like it's a fairly easy process. You come together, you decide what things you're going to do together to mitigate maybe like tree trimming so that there's fire breaks around areas. You put in X amount of hours of work, and then they certify you and they ensure that these hazards are taken down. So with that being said, I think everyone should try it. I'm trying it myself so that I can be an advocate of the things that I talk about. The chair recommends that Resolution 24247 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, any objections, any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item number 3. We have an informational briefing, an update by the Department of Environmental Services on the selection of the next landfill site to replace the Waimanalo Gulch Sanitary Landfill, including the findings of supplemental investigations into alternative sites after the conclusion of the Landfill Advisory Committee. With us today, we do have Director Babcock, Director of the Department of Environmental Services, and we do have in front of us the handout, and for those who are tuning in online, he'll be sharing the slides with you. Go ahead, Director. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Roger Babcock, Department of Environmental Services. I guess we're going to get the presentation going here in a second. Okay, thank you. And I guess I can. Let me just make sure. Technical difficulties here, just a second, with being able to advance the slides. Okay. Okay. Thanks for your patience. So I'll be going through the slides now to give you an update on where we're at with the landfill site selection efforts. So start with a little bit of overview of some of the milestones of the process. So back in November of 2019, the Land Use Committee decision and order required us to close the Waimanalo Gulch Sanitary Landfill no later than March 2nd of 2028, and required us to identify alternative landfill site by December 31st of 2022. In the 21-22 time period, Mayor formed the Landfill Advisory Committee, LAC, and they met several times in open committee meetings, which are covered later, and issued a final report that was published in June of 2022. In December of 22, ENV submitted a request to the Land Use Commission to modify the deadline to identify the alternative landfill site. That process took a while, but in August of this year, of 2024, they did extend the deadline for us to identify the alternative site to December 31st of this year, which was the extension we had asked for. And our intention is that we'll be announcing the alternative site next month in November. So a little bit of history on the Waimanalo Gulch Sanitary Landfill. It's located on Farrington Highway in Kapolei. It's been in operation since 1989. It was initially designed and permitted to accept waste for approximately 20 years. It was expanded twice since it began operation to utilize a remaining landfill space available on the property. In 2019, there was a decision that it needed to be closed by 28 and a new site identified by 2022. So in terms of the siting restrictions, there are several. The most recent one is Act 73, which was enacted in September of 2020, which was after the decision and order from the Land Use Committee. It includes two restrictions that are a challenge. One is a half-mile buffer zone for residences, schools, and hospitals between any landfill site and those types of land use. It also eliminates conservation districts as potential locations for landfills. There's also federal Subtitle D regulations. There's an airport runway buffer zone, can't be in wetlands, floodplains, fault areas, seismic impact zones, and unstable areas. In addition, there's state rule, HAR 11, Title 11, that prohibits siting landfills in a tsunami inundation zone. There's also challenges with federal lands, what we call developed and undevelopable lands. Those are lands that have already been approved for development, cannot be used. And then we have the Board of Water Supply no pass zone. So these restrictions are shown on this map, and they are color-coded for the different types of restrictions. And the dotted line is the Board of Water Supply no pass zone boundary. Conservation areas are in green, airports are the orange color, et cetera. So those are what the map looks like with all the different restrictions on there. A little bit about what the Landfill Advisory Committee did. It was formed in September of 2021. The members were asked to provide input on landfill site evaluation and to create scoring criteria. And they did complete that, and they did score 6 landfill sites that they were asked to evaluate. And I'll show you those on the next slide. There were 8 LAC meetings. They were Sunshine Law compliant. They were open meetings between October of 2021 and June of 2022. In June of 2022, the 6 landfill sites were scored and ranked, but none were recommended for the next landfill because they were all located in the no-pass zone. So a little bit more about the no-pass zone and the LAC recommendations. So what is a no-pass zone? So no-pass zone is a Honolulu Board of Water Supply designated geographical area of the island where groundwater resources are not protected by a geologic formation known as a cap rock layer. So the cap rock layer is around the outside of the island, and it is a formation that prevents infiltration from above. So the Board of Water Supply opposes locating a new landfill at any of the 6 potential sites within the no-pass zone. Those are shown in orange. Those sites do meet all the other restrictions except for the no-pass zone. The LAC siting Board of Water Supply's position recommended the next landfill be located outside of the no-pass zone. And the environmental and public health concerns related to the 2021 Red Hill fuel leak weighed heavily on the Landfill Advisory Committee decision-making process. That had happened right in the middle of the LAC set of meetings. So what was recommended by the LAC in their report in July was to request an extension from the Land Use Commission to explore more options. They specifically recommended exploring federal lands, which had been excluded during their deliberations, explore amending Act 73 in order to make other additional sites available outside of the no-pass zone, and explore eminent domain. Again, all three of these were to look for sites outside of the no-pass zone because they had recommended against all sites within the no-pass zone. So in December, we submitted a request to the Planning Commission and Land Use Commission for a 2-year extension of the deadline to identify an alternative site. And during that time, in the interim period, since asking for that extension, we conducted extensive site search and evaluation of the 3 things that were recommended by the advisory committee to look into. And we've published a result in a report called the Oahu Landfill Siting Study Supplemental Technical Memorandum, dated October 15th of 2024. And that's available on our website. So the next slide talks about what is in, essentially in that report that supplements what was the report that was done by the Landfill Advisory Committee. So in beginning of 2022, the city worked with the Navy to identify federal lands outside the no-pass zone that would be compliant with Act 73. And those, I'll show those here in a minute, but basically in 2024, the Navy declined to offer use of the Waipio Peninsula where the soccer complex is for the next landfill. And also in March of 2023, before that, in the State of the City address, the mayor promised no new landfill would be located on the Waianae coast. So the next thing that happened is the extension was granted just this past August. Planning Commission granted our request to identify the alternative landfill site by 2 years until December 31st of this year, 2024. The additional things that they put in there is that we have to report quarterly to the Planning Commission on our efforts taken and plans to identify an alternative landfill site, and to also respond to questions from the Commission and the community. And that between August and now, we did do one report. It's a third quarter 2024 report and presentation to the Planning Commission was on September 18th. And then we submitted that presentation and information report essentially to the Land Use Commission, and also put that on our website. So moving on then to sites under potential sites. So this table shows sites that are in the no-pass zone that were evaluated by the Landfill Advisory Committee and discussed in their final report, in their meetings and their final report. So the sites are identified in the column on the left. The restrictions associated with each one are in the middle column, and then the ownership is shown on the right side column. The sites are shown in their rank order. The Landfill Advisory Committee evaluated them. They had 16 criteria. They had assigned scores and weights and came up with final scores for all the sites. And this is the rank order of the site selection that they went through. And it shows where they are: Wahiawa near Kunia Road, Kapolei Waipahu near Kunia Road, 3 different sites in Wahiawa, and a site near our Kawailoa transfer station in the Haleiwa area. You'll notice in the middle column that all of them are in the no-pass zone, so that's a restriction that's listed there. Some have other restrictions that are important. Several of them you can see are in a well capture zone. What that means is that there is a production well, either for drinking water or for agricultural water, in the vicinity, typically. And a well, wells are at the surface, and they pump from water that's deep within the ground through a pipe, and there's a pump at the bottom of the well, at the bottom of the pipe, and it's pumping water up. And a well draws water from its vicinity of the well. It doesn't draw from the other side of the island. It draws from within a defined area, and that's called the capture zone. And the State Department of Health has a source water protection rule and a source water protection map, essentially, which shows the capture zones for all the wells on the island. And so where it says here well capture zone, that is what it means. It means it's within a capture zone as documented on by the State Department of Health Safe Drinking Water Branch. So you'll notice some of them are in well capture zones, and you'll notice that some are on agricultural land. Essentially all of them are on agricultural land, even though some of them don't say that. One is shown as it is a more remote location. The ownership of those pieces of property are shown in the right-hand column, because I know that was a question from the last time we spoke. The next slide shows those 6 sites in a little bit closer. These were what the advisory committee was working with at the time. The yellow line shown is the no-pass zone boundary. So the no-pass zone is everything inside of the yellow line, the interior of the island. Outside the no-pass zone is the fringe, the rest of what's left along the coast. And you'll see that most of the island is in the border water supply no-pass zone. So the next step then was to look at sites that are excluded by Act 73, but would be outside of the no-pass zone. This means that we'd need to have a modification to Act 73 to make the remainder of the sites that are going to be shown available. So the bullets there show that they meet all the Subtitle D restrictions and Title 11 restrictions, meaning tsunami zone and those things. It has to be outside of the BWS no-pass zone, but it does require modifications to Act 73. So the first set are reducing the buffer from 1/2 mile to 1/4 mile. So leaving, and also removing part of the conservation district restriction at the same time. If that is done, if that modification happens to the law, then it frees up 2 different sites that are shown here. One is in Waimanalo, and that's owned by the state of Hawaii. And one is part of the HC&D quarry, the south portion of it. And that is requires both of those restrictions to be relaxed from 1/2 mile to 1/4 mile. And it shows the ownership there of that piece of property if that restriction is relaxed. So those are shown on the next page on the map where they are. So you can see that they are outside the border water supply no-pass zone. They're outside of the yellow area. And however, they are less than, there's homes that are less than 1/2 mile away, but more than 1/4 mile away. Okay, the next step is to say, what if all the same restrictions apply? It's outside of no-pass zone. You include the Subtitle D restrictions, tsunami zone, and then you modify Act 73 by removing the buffer zone altogether and the conservation land restriction. So if you do that, there are 4 additional sites that become available, which are shown here. The rest of the HC&D quarry becomes available. There are some other sites, the area where the Youth Correctional Facility and Olamana School are, an area near Castle Junction and Poly Highway, and an area in West Oahu campus by the UH West Oahu campus. These sites, again, would be within the buffer zone from residences and or hospital or a school, which currently prohibits any of these sites. The ownership then is shown on the right side column. And the map then shows where these sites are located. You can see that they're outside of the no-pass zone. There are 3 over on the windward side and 1 near the NUH and Kapolei area. Okay. So that was the way that exercise was done, has been done. And so it lets you know what the sites that are still available for selection. So this next slide shows sites that have been removed from further consideration. And so there's 3 columns here: the name of the site, the restrictions, and the ownership. So the area adjacent to the Waimanalo Sanitary Landfill was eliminated even from consideration of the Landfill Advisory Committee, but we put it back here because it does meet the restrictions, but it is on the west side, and the mayor has committed that we wouldn't do that, would not name a site there. The next one is the federal land east of the Lualua land. Again, it's been eliminated from consideration because it's on the west side. It's federal property also. There's also the federal land on the Waipio Peninsula and the federal land near there in West Loch. Both of those have been rejected by the military. There's another area that wasn't shown earlier, is the Hawaii Prince Golf Course. It was eliminated because it's in the path of airports, and so there's an airport restriction. It is large enough if other restrictions are restricted are relaxed, but it's been eliminated. There are also some other small parcels that are smaller than 100 acres that have been deemed not feasible to accommodate a landfill. We actually need about 150 acres. The landfill itself is a little less than 100 acres, but you need land to do processing, have leachate collection and treatment systems, areas for trucks to move around, and equipment to be stored and maintained. So we need about 150 acres actually of actual footprint. And so anything under 100 was eliminated. 100 is smaller than 150, but it's possible that if something was 100 acres and maybe there were 200 acre sites that we could have 2 sites. But anything smaller than 100 acres is just too small to really consider as anything feasible. So this graph or plot shows all of those sites that we've been talking about that have been eliminated from further consideration. We see the federal lands on the Waipio Peninsula, West Loch, Maili, Lualua, the area adjacent to the landfill, et cetera, and as well as the other ones that are would require modification of Act 73. So all the sites are shown on here, this slide. Okay.
Director, on the next two ones, I'll just have the council members look at this. These ones aren't as related to the site selection, but I do appreciate the update about waste diversion and alternative technologies. But I wanted to leave space for questions, but also we have a bunch of testifiers too.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Just real quick, I appreciate every time you guys speak about it, it gets a little clearer because it's kind of sometimes hazy or blurry. So are you saying that the announcement next month will come from the sites that are within the no-pass zone? Is that where the site selection is going to happen?
We're not saying yet which site we're going to select. The sites that have not been removed from consideration are all possible sites to be
But you
named.
guys couldn't possibly be announcing anything that requires the modification of Act 73 since we're not in charge of that and that the ledge is not in session, correct?
We could name a site that would require legislative action to modify Act 73.
So you guys would name a site that would need modification in Act 73 and just hope that the legislature would agree with that?
Correct.
'Cause- Interesting. Okay, council members, go ahead. Questions? Okay, I'm going to ask one more question then.
Sure.
How did you guys come up with the 150 acres being needed, and is it only for ash? So like the size of it, is it due just because we don't have anything to do with the ash?
No, yeah, thank you for that question. So it's about the size of the landfill, the need. So the landfill has been sized as part of the whole process and looking for footprints of where things could go based upon 20 years of our current disposal practices, which is ash and some non-burnables, as well as diversion, which happens every year when H-Power is out of service for various reasons. So all that current loading rate for 20 years, plus 20 years of waste resulting from construction and demolition waste that currently goes to PVT. So it's in anticipation that that would close, and it would need to all then come to the city because there's no other place that it could go.
So it'd be
20 years of that combined weight amount is what the landfill is sized for, and that requires a footprint of the landfill itself, the pile, of about 100 acres.
So it's basically the non-burnables, the ash, and then the construction waste that you guys are planning for, and
Yes.
you're basing it on the past couple years. How large, what is the acreage of Waimanalo Gulch?
Waimanalo Gulch is about 200 acres in area.
So you're saying that you guys are trying to divert as much as you can, but you're still coming up with that you need 150 acres.
So 100 acres for the landfill itself, but for the footprint
I see.
of
I see what you're
space-
saying.
Yeah.
The landfill will be about 100, so you're trying to get that down to maybe 100, which I don't know if the 200 that you quoted was actually the entire size or just the landfill of Waimanalo Gulch.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think it's the landfill itself. There's not much space that's not landfill at Waimanalo Gulch now because many of the facilities have been built on top of
I
older
see.
portions of the landfill because it's been there a long time.
Okay, that was my last question. Council member Say.
Thank you very much, Director Babcock. A couple of questions that I have. In the forecast of the waste that we generate for the county of Oahu, what is the projections in regards to the increase in the waste that we'll have in the waste stream? Have you folks done research in regards to if the population of Oahu does come up to a million, the generation of waste that may occur that, we have to find a place?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, so we use the volume that's projected is based upon, I think, a small amount of growth. Basically, the sizing is fairly conservative. It's possible that something else will happen with C&D waste. It's possible that waste reduction activities, which we have numerous of that are on the slide, and other things, and an ash recycling project, that these will reduce the waste stream a lot more. But we need to kind of prepare kind of kind of for a worst-case condition, like you're saying, council member. The other thing is that we want to have enough space in case there's a natural disaster that a large portion of waste would need to be disposed of. The projections are from Department of Emergency Management and the state that if a Category 4 hurricane hit, that we would generate something like 20 years of waste all at once that would need to be disposed of. And, you know, we wouldn't be able to burn it. We would still be needing to burn the full waste stream that we have now. Wouldn't be able to do that additional waste stream. So we need to have a fairly large site to be able to
Okay,
handle the situation.
Madam Chair, just trying to be creative as you look forward to the end of the year. Is it possible to get the governor to do a governor's proclamation?
A proclamation for the site selection?
Yes, ma'am. That's what they did for Maui.
Is that what you guys are going to pursue?
No. They're not. I'm just bringing this up. I'm bringing this up as an alternative.
But they could. I mean, it could be what the administration's going to pursue.
I really don't know, but I just asking the question, the process that took Maui County in regards to the Lahaina waste was very quick on the permitting process side. So I just bring this up because I can understand what you folks are going through. For the past 4 years, the amount of work you folks have done in the area of diversion is fantastic. And just the thought of the H-Power ashes now going to Waimanalo Gulch is a sign that we are moving ahead. It's just that sometimes these type of deadlines, I think, is just arbitrary. It's not fair for the county. And finally, if you could maybe try and figure it out, talk to the mayor, maybe we can be not exempt, but carved out of Act 73 for our future landfill. That's all. That's all I'm saying, because you got to go before the ledge. Maybe the governor can just do it by his signing of a proclamation, right?
I think a huge fight would happen, but it's a possibility. Everything's a possibility.
Well, for you and I and Councilmember DeSantos Tam, we just go and see our colleagues who are state legislature from Oahu. They have the majority, and this is affecting Oahu as a county. They're all going to face the music, one way or the other, not just Calvin Say. I don't understand why, they had to tie the county's hands in regards to Act 73 to some degree. Nobody wants it in their backyard. I recognize that. But at that point in time, we had to address it, because I don't think what he has presented in regards to shipping out waste, I don't think it's going to work. But I do hear stories about our Western states who export their waste to the third world countries in Asia. And that's how we created that big garbage patch.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just for clarification, it's only been in one backyard, the West Side backyard. Thank you. Councilmember DeSantos Tam.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about the construction waste and debris issue because, as you point out, at some point, PVT will no longer operate, whether that's it reaches its capacity or there's some other issue that comes along the way. To what extent have we, as a community, you as a department, looked at ways that we can reduce the volume of that waste stream? I understand that some of the things can't be broken down further, but there must be something we can do to reduce that amount. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And it was a subject of our source reduction working group that we operated earlier this year that met several times. And it was a group of community groups and industry and stuff like that. And they came up with some recommendations. And one of them was specifically to work on construction and demolition waste to figure out ways to do that. Construction and demolition waste has a lot of valuable material in it that can be recycled. Perhaps the majority, more than half, perhaps up to 75%, could be recycled. That just requires a material recovery facility, which are not inexpensive or quick to construct, but it can be done. And moving forward, that would be, the path, to approach. And because there's concrete can be recycled, there's steel that can be taken out, there's glass, and many things that can be recovered. So that would definitely be, on the path forward with respect to the construction and demolition waste.
Thank you. I'd love to continue this conversation. I think that this is something that we absolutely need to be doing. And, having worked for 6 years in the construction industry, I think this is something that's of great interest and would certainly help our overall waste stream conversation. So that's very interesting. I'm sure the chair of this committee would have some interest in that as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Councilmember. I do think even separating out the construction debris separate than our other landfill conversation, because PVT was recycling up to 80%. So if they're recycling 80%, we should have a goal of like 85 or something higher, because that leaves very, very little that needs to go into the landfill. But also, they were using a lot of different machineries that we don't have in the city that you guys would have to invest in if you did that level of recycling. So, okay, any other questions, council members? Let's go to testimony. Clerks, let's take in person, since we have a few people here, and I'm not sure if they have enough quarters for the parking. So if it's okay, are there any registered in-person testimony? I think it's Mr. Corona, am I correct? All right, we'll have David Corona come up here.
Good afternoon, David Corona. I'm an Ely resident of the community. Thank you, committee chair and committee members. Just briefly, I only had a chance to look at this brief late last night and then some this morning. I looked at your the supplemental package as well, and I can kind of, looking at that, I can determine pretty closely what your recommendations are going to be going forward. But just briefly, because this is an informational briefing and I don't want to take up too much time, and I know there's a lot of people out there, just a couple comments that I would maybe the committee can address or I can hear back from would be the modification of Act 73 requirement. My concern would be that it's an all or nothing type modification, to where it wouldn't specifically be for this one specific time and instance for the landfill, whereas it would negate a lot of the policy in the act, therefore possibly allowing PVT to expand itself while keeping construction and demolition separate, because I don't think that the Department of Environmental Services is quite ready for that collection. And then finally, all the measures and alternatives, in my opinion, with all the time that you've had, should have been built into the new landfill site versus trying to say there's other ulterior alternatives, but we're just looking at a new landfill site. I just feel all that should have been built into this. You've had enough time to think about that. Final comment. We talked to the council, full council, probably about 20 years ago when at the time Senator Gabbard was a council member for our district, and said that plasmic arc was probably the best way to go, and we're kind of away from that now. So thank you very much, committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Corona, for coming. Mr. Manaku.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Concern James Manaku, Senior Concern Cancer. I think plasma arc is something we need to consider, because, and then also we need to get rid of PVT, because we're not, what we're looking at is putting something there that's not going to disappear. Yeah, it's going to stay there forever and ever and ever. And we're talking about hazardous material. We're not talking something that will eventually disappear. It will stay there forever. And we're talking about, well, we're having a race of people that are disappearing. Yeah? So I'm not sure what we're doing, but we have to look at something that will make our rubbish disappear. So let's look at something that will make it disappear. Plasma arc. Yeah. So let's be creative. Yeah. Waianae has the most people in the world in this island, yeah, Hawaiians, we are the people of the islands. Come on, people, protect us. Yeah, protect us. Get rid of all of that hazardous material that you're piling in one place that is creating
Thank you, Mr.
We're grown
Manaku.
up, right?
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
We're
Manaku.
grown up. We went to school. We graduated. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say PVT has downsized quite a bit and will be closing due to capacity constraints because of Act 73. So that is happening in these coming years. Is there any other non-registered or registered testifiers in person that would like to speak? Thank you. Okay, let's go to online. Can we start with our registered online testifiers, clerks?
We have Jermaine Myers.
Okay, Ms. Myers, go ahead.
Aloha Chair, aloha committee members. My name is Jermaine Myers. I'm a third-generation resident of Nanakuli Hawaiian Homestead since my birth in 1967. My ohana are part of the original settlers of Nanakuli since 1930, with 7 generations total to date living along the Waianae Coast. First, I ditto David Corona's testimony. Next, I mahalo Mayor Blangiardi for continuing to honor his commitment to our community that the next landfill will not be located again in our council district number 1 within the Waianae Coast. Currently, if a tsunami or another natural disaster were to occur on the west side shores of Oahu, me, my ohana, and our neighbors will be faced with the challenges of dealing with the toxic waste and debris from Waimanalo Gulch, Hiko Power Plant at Kahe, and PVT landfill in Nanakuli, along with the solar plants and Lualua Lake Valley or Naval Exchange, or Naval. I kindly ask for you to take these things, environmental consequences, into consideration as the city consider future landfill and utility infrastructure for the island of Oahu. Kia kuapu, God bless all of you.
Mahalo, Ms. Myers. Thank you for your work on the neighborhood board as well as on the subcommittee for health. Really appreciate you tuning in today. Clerks, are there registered testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
All right, let's go to unregistered testifiers. You can raise your hand and they'll unmute you. I know I see various people from Waianae community on. Okay, we'll start with Angela Melody Young. She's not from Waianae, but you can, of course, testify. Yes, go ahead.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young. Thank you, Councilmember Andrea. So testifying on behalf of CARES, and the presentation looks good. I'm in favor of the process of the new trash landfill, as the city is looking for a very large, desirable site. And so Waimanalo processes everybody's trash and H-Power's ashes. So if there are so much rules and limitations, a new idea to how to reduce large amounts of trash is good. So for example, if there's less trash for a new site, the size could be smaller, right? So with over 10 million tons of plastic entering our oceans yearly, responsible recycling has never been more important in our quest for rapid urbanization, especially to care for the dolphins, whales, and turtles. So the new Breath of Life for plastics in Singapore, the trash of plastics in Singapore, is to work with a company which creates out of the recycled plastics new bitumen, which is then something to build roadways.
Thank you so much, Ms. Young. Thank you for your testimony. I know you care about the animals. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Ms. DeCourt, please.
Aloha Chair and Council members, Samantha DeCourt, resident of Waianae. I just wanted to echo and agree with the sentiments from Mr. Corona and Mrs. Myers. We also want to mahalo the mayor for continuing to keep his commitment. No more landfills on the Waianae Coast. And I just wanted to state for the record that we oppose, or I oppose, any extensions or any future landfills on the Waianae Coast. But mahalo you for your great work, and aloha.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Tiana Wilbur. Tiana, are you there?
Hi, aloha. Alamai. I just have comments, if anything. Same sentiments with other residents along the coast, and mahalo for the time and attention on this matter, and again to Mayor's commitment to not allow this next landfill planning to happen along the Leeward coast. But mahalo for having us today.
Mahalo, Ms. Wilbur. Malia Augustin.
Aloha, thank you for this time. My name is Malia Augustin. I'm a resident of Nanakuli Hawaiian Homestead, and I'm also on the neighborhood board as the chair for Land and Water Committee, and I appreciate all the things that were shared by my fellow board members, Corona, Myers, and DeCourt. And I 2008 impact that's going to have on the health and welfare of the people in the area. So us being seasoned and understanding that impact, hopefully you folks can also consider that wherever the next landfill site is announced to be on this island. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Malia. Any others wishing to testify virtually? I see the, Senator Gabbard's office tuning in. I'm not sure if the senator wanted to testify, but go ahead and raise your hand if you guys would. I'm just being respectful. Okay, thank you so much. At this time, we're going to close testimony, both in person and virtual. I do have a follow-up question from Councilmember Dos Santos Tam for the director.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming and giving us this update. I wanted to ask a more long-term question. Could you describe to us what happens to Waimanalo Gulch after it's closed? What does rehabilitation of it look like? Is it simply just capped and sort of forgotten about? What does that look like?
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember, for asking that. So that's actually in the federal rules for governing all landfills. So there's a closure process that has to be followed, and it's a 30-year, so it has to be capped, sealed, and then monitored and maintained for 30 years. So the cap that goes on there is a liner, just like the liner that's on the bottom. It's kind of a two-layer liner, a plastic liner and a clay liner. Then there's dirt put on top of that soil, and then it has to be planted, and then all of that has to be maintained, like I said, for 30 years. FYI, we currently maintain 2 closed landfills in Kailua as part of that. And so that is an important responsibility that you have, that the city has for essentially in perpetuity. And the landfills landfills also produce methane, which must be captured and either burned or recovered for energy generation. And so we will be, of course, following that process when the landfill is closed. And I did want to say one other thing from your previous comment, if I may, just really quick. The other thing with C&D waste is to do source reduction. And there are a lot of efforts in, for example, green building, which developers and construction companies can follow to really minimize waste before we then have to process it. So anyway, thanks.
Okay, I just have a few more comments. Councilmember Zay, are we good? Yep. Okay, so here's my comments with your presentation. You presented 2 different ways to go about with Act 73. One was to repeal, complete, or to reduce from the half mile to the quarter mile. I think you guys are forgetting that you can actually do an exemption a one time of one site. That would be probably way more easy than trying to either repeal or make the line smaller, but it would still be quite the feat. And I personally think that it's a battle that's not going to be won at the legislature because tons and tons of effort and time went into implement that act. And so I would be very saddened next month if I hear you guys announce that it's going to be a site within Act 73, because that whole process of getting the legislature to agree with us is something that's out of our control. Secondly, the sites that are within the no pass zone with the Board of Water Supply, I mean, I do think that that's almost going to cause an internal city fight, because that's fighting against our own Board of Water Supply if we choose a site that's going to be on top of an aquifer. And I don't know how we could justify that that's a safe place to put it. And I know that Ernie Lau would go to the ends of the earth to fight against that, so I wouldn't want to cause a city fight. So I think lastly, I did invite your office as well as many others, and I just want to be transparent for the council members. One of our sister cities I visited this summer stopped doing landfills in 2009, the entire city, and they have 8 million residents. They create 30,000 bricks. They have fertilizer for farmers as a byproduct of course fuel and bioenergy. No more landfills there. And so I know that we have a gap between where we are and where that could be, but I am hopeful that possibly by sitting down with this group that we could learn more. A lot of it has to do with methane capture. So basically sealing airtight the whole process from beginning to end. So I am in hopes that we can do more. And I know you guys are already doing a lot, but I think as we lead up to this choice or the announcement of the site, was one of the options going to be that you guys ship it off? I mean, the Civil Beat article just covered that. Is that not one of the options that's going to be announced?
So you're referring to, we currently have an RFI online for folks to respond to. It's open now. That is to see whether there are contractors who are interested in shipping waste from the city off island. And so we will see what we get from that. It is an RFI. It's not an RFP asking for proposals and costs. It's asking for feasibility. And we would then decide based on that whether or not to pursue then an RFP to try and do some sort of a contract for that. So we've sort of reopened that as a possibility, and so yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll see what we get from that. It does close soon, before the end of the year.
Yep, I saw the date. Thank you so much, Director, for your transparency and for your work putting this together for the public. Thank you, committee members. There being no further business, this meeting is now adjourned.